Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Ask the Panel webinar today. We're just going to give it a minute to give people a chance to join, and then we will get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today. This is the Ask the Panel webinar. We're just going to give it a few more seconds and get started at 12 p.m. Great. It has hit 12 p.m., so we will get started. This is the Ask the Panel webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. So I am Sahil, I'm the Key Partnerships Manager, so I may have spoken to some of you via email. And also joining from Big Give side is Beth, our Marketing and Comms Manager. Before we begin, I'll just go over some housekeeping. So you will see the chat box at the bottom and on the at the side of your Zoom panel. Please set your reply to everyone so everyone can see what you're saying. Please introduce yourselves here. You can do a bit of networking, say who you are, what organization you're from. You can share ideas in the chat box as well. If you have any tech issues, please post them there too, and we will jump on them as soon as we can see them. If you have any questions for the Q&A portion of the webinar, please type questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. So you see a Q&A button. Please press that and then type your questions in there. Please avoid putting them in the chat box as we can sometimes miss them there. We would probably try to encourage you to ask questions more relevant to the panel as we have time with them today to try and share their experiences. So we'll prioritize the questions more relevant for the panel first, and then we'll get to any tech-related questions. If you have any accessibility needs, please click on the caption button at the bottom of your Zoom panel. So you may have to click on the More button and then you'll see it and then you can turn it on. So if you do need that, that is how you turn it on. We are recording the webinar, so it will be available to watch on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So yeah, if you do want to watch it back or share it with colleagues, please visit the YouTube channel to see the recording and any other recordings we posted there. And after the webinar, if you have any questions for us, please contact us at hello@biggive.org and we'll be happy to support you. With that in mind, I will introduce our first panelist, who is Emma from Homestart, Banbury Bicester and Chipping Norton. They won the Christmas Challenge Award for, I think it was the Best Small Charity last year. So I'll hand over to Emma now to share their experiences of their campaign last year.
Hey, thank you, Sahil. Just going to share my screen now. I hope everybody can see that.
Yeah, we can see that.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm the Fundraising and Communications Officer for Homestart Banbury Bicester and Chipping Norton. And thanks to the Big Give for inviting us today to chat about our 2024 Christmas Challenge campaign. Oh. There you go. Who are we? We are a small local charity that provides emotional and practical support to parents with at least one child under the age of 5 living in Banbury Bicester, Chipping Norton, or the surrounding villages. And our mission is to help alleviate hardship and foster resilience in families so they can build stronger, healthier futures together. Parenting young children can be an absolute joy, but it does come with a fair share of certain challenges, and the families that get referred to us often have a complex web of these challenges and therefore require a little bit of extra help to get through those day-to-day family struggles. Examples would be things like struggling with poor mental health, isolation, being an asylum-seeking or refugee family, living in inadequate housing, struggling with debt and financial difficulties, including food and energy poverty, or experiencing domestic abuse. What our support looks like is we provide one-to-one home visiting support through matching our families with a trained volunteer. That volunteer will visit the family in their home for 3 hours per week, providing emotional, non-judgmental support and practical help. On top of our core work, we also have complementary services like some universal drop and stay and play groups that local families can attend. And we offer our supported families some trips out throughout the year, and they also get to enjoy our yearly Christmas parties. So our first Big Give Christmas Challenge campaign was in 2023, and probably like a lot of small charities out there, we historically rely on trusts and foundations funding. And we needed to look at diversifying our income streams, and using the Big Give match funding platform was one of the options that we wanted to explore. We're a tiny team. We don't have a big marketing budget. We don't have a dedicated comms person. But we needed to give it a go. So we went into our first experience, our first Big Give adventure, with no planning, no experience of what a campaign like this potentially needed. But we knew that it would give us a good platform upon which to build when we were going to go to participate in future campaigns. So looking at then our second year of participating, we set a very ambitious target of £20,000, which is double the previous year. We did reach our target in our first year through lots of stress and plenty of chaos. So we thought, well, if we've got that experience and we can reflect on our learnings, hopefully we'll be in a better position to have a solid campaign and reach that target. So we swiftly went on to start securing our pledges, and we used existing relationships with some local businesses, and we built on those corporate connections through asking whether they would be willing to support our campaign as a pledger. And we were fortunate enough to have a couple of those local businesses come on board and be part of our Big Give campaign. We then needed to mobilize our team into action. So again, being a small team, you heavily rely on full team involvement. And what that looked like for us was getting all of our staff and trustees to have the Big Give banner on an email footer when they sent out all their emails, making sure our website was ready and prepared. So having a donate button very visible, ready for when donations went live, but also anybody visiting our homepage being able to see very clearly from the get-go through Big Give banners and things like that, that we are participating in the Big Give should they wish to support us. Again, going back to our team, making sure that everyone who is able is sharing our social media posts, and anyone going to any events, taking along some flyers to distribute, and just spreading the word amongst their friends and families. And that sort of fundamental strategy worked really well for us, and making sure that everyone felt like they were involved and having a piece of the success that we eventually saw. Oh, sorry, I was also just going to say, I mean, I forgot that very important bit, is that ultimately planning is everything. So you can't start too early. In getting a really good campaign plan on the go and sticking to that plan also worked really well for us, knowing what it was like to not have a plan the year before and feeling really stressed about it. We wanted to identify 4 key themes to focus on for our 2024 campaign. And those were developing our social media methods and marketing skills, improving on our impact through storytelling and sharing relatable posts with our supporters on our social media platforms. We wanted to look at extending our reach, as having a really small existing supporter base. It's something that a lot of small charities have, I guess. And we were looking at creative ways of doing that. And then also being able to utilize our community as best we could and getting them involved in our community fundraising efforts. And ultimately, all of that together, and presenting that in our 2024 Big Give case study, we were delighted to then be awarded as Big Give's Best Small Charity for 2024. So what did our case study look at? So with the development, we detailed how we improved on our Canvas skills and how we looked at creating some authentic video content that our followers really did enjoy engaging with. And again, not having a dedicated comms person, using things like the resources that the Big Give provide were really beneficial to us to use and help with things like time management, etc. And going on to impact, all fundraisers know how crucial storytelling is as part of your charity story as well, and getting to connect with mutually people with a mutual mindset. And so we did some sharing of our volunteer stories and our family stories on our social media platforms, and also conveyed our message through sharing quotes from supported families as well as relatable statistics. And then we really did have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones in a series of radio appearances that we did. And this was in order to try creative ways of reaching a wider audience. So being on the radio meant more people were listening, hearing our name, hearing that we're participating in the Big Give. And added benefit of that was also creating relationships with the radio hosts themselves. And then in turn, they were sharing our posts on their own social media platforms and sharing the news of our Big Give campaign with their own circle of family and friends, which resulted in a few donations through that avenue as well, which was great. And then looking at our community fundraising efforts, we had a few different ways in which our supporters raised funds for us that were then donated into our Big Give campaign. And some successful examples are a local tennis club held a tennis tournament on our behalf. One of our trustees and her young son baked some gingerbread men, and they sold those to families in their village. Our stay and play drop-in groups held numerous cake sales to raise some funds, and we had a couple of our volunteers and our family support workers sell some handmade crafts at a local Christmas fair. And so the results of all of those efforts were that even with 2 days still to go, we managed to reach and then exceed our target, which was just absolutely fantastic for our team. We were really, really, really over the moon that we managed to do that. So taking on the additional gift aid funds and then looking at the Big Give fees, we managed to end our campaign with just under £24,000 raised. And for our small charity, that worked out to approximately 10% of our total predicted income for the year. So an absolutely crucial campaign for us to have put our efforts into, and it paid off, which was fabulous to see. Again, looking at any other small charities that might be listening, or charities that haven't participated before, I think that our learnings are probably most helpful to you. And we could list many, many, many things that we learned from our campaign last year, but I just wanted to highlight a few of them that I thought might be good for you to take on board for your own campaign this year. Producing and adhering to a detailed schedule was really helpful for us, and making use of those Big Give assets really saved on our time and our own resource. Preparing events and media and communications well in advance means that you'll have a much less stressful campaign. And looking at collaborative community efforts is something that we'll definitely utilize in future campaigns. And then just gaining experience and new skills in things like Canva and public speaking on the radio, and obviously presenting at webinars like this. And just overall campaign management experience has been extremely beneficial to our small community. So thank you very much to the Big Give for providing this opportunity for us. And then I'd just like to end on saying thank you to everybody for listening. I hope that something that I've said might be useful to some of you, and just share our impact poster as to why we do what we do and why raising funds through the Big Give is an important and crucial part of our fundraising strategy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. That was a really great presentation. Really, I love that. Lots to take from that, especially like around community fundraising, engaging with the community. So, really, thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thank you.
I'll now introduce Nicola from Stripey Stork, who won the Best Newcomer Award last year. So I will hand over to Nicola now.
Thank you, and thank you, Emma, for a great presentation. I just share our slides. All right, we'll be in slideshow mode. Great. Right, well, thank you. So I'm Nicola from Stripey Stork, and we're one of the UK's largest baby banks. And we take donations of items for babies and children, and we rehome them with families who need a helping hand. And it's not uncommon for us to help about 300 families a week. Last year was the first time that we participated in the Big Give, and we set ourselves quite a challenging target. And you can see here that it was incredibly successful for us. The campaign had a really clear focus. We give out most baskets, cots, and cot beds, and demand was increasing. Safe sleep is really essential, and we wanted to make sure that we had the resources so that we rarely had a waiting list, and that was incredibly important to us. Our case study is on the Big Give website, and it resulted in us winning the Best Newcomer Award, which we were incredibly proud of. But what I wanted to highlight today were some of the key things that we thought were incredibly important in terms of having a successful campaign, which others might find helpful. So the first point for us was making sure that the whole team understood the focus of the project so that we could all promote the campaign. We have a team day each October, and Big Give is now an agenda item. And we all have our experience of how we work with families, or how our roles contribute to the work that we do. And that was what we focused on. What was the connection to us personally. And for me, in the summer before the campaign, I'd taken a call from a midwife who'd visited a newborn baby who was sleeping in an Amazon box. And she phoned us desperate to ensure that that child had a safe place to sleep that night. Now, we could help immediately, but I just almost had chills, fearing that we might have been in a position where we couldn't help. And so for me, that made me very driven to be successful in this campaign. And I shared that story a lot when I talked to prospective donors. And I feel that it had far more impact than simply saying we want to give out 1,000 safe places to sleep next year. Bringing it back to the story and potentially an individual family was really important. The next point is that we know that the Big Give campaign runs for a week, and it can feel quite an intimidating prospect to try and bring in so much money in 1 week. So obviously that early planning is essential. We'd looked at our calendar of events and agreed when we thought that there were fundraising opportunities that we should try and direct towards the campaign. So, for example, one of the corporate teams that we work with had organised a golf day in the September and raised £11,000 for us. They had the money to donate in October, but we asked them to hold on to it. They were delighted to do that, and especially to learn that the funds were going to be matched. And that was something that they could proudly share to everyone who had attended the golf day. So it had the extra benefit of everybody, realising that their fundraising had been doubled, which was great. And that leads us on to my next point, is just the power of the match funding hook, and to really use that in your communications and your conversations. obviously people are really, enthused by the fact that their donations could be doubled, and when you add gift aid as well, the potential impact that can have. We have some regular donors who we can usually count on to make a donation at Christmas time, but I found it so much easier to proactively contact them and promote this opportunity to them. We've got this great opportunity coming up, and this could be a way to stretch your donation further. Almost without exception, they were keen to take advantage of that, and there were a couple of instances where they pledged much higher amounts than we would usually expect at Christmas because of the match funding. So make sure that is really clear. Also, the Big Give has got a great reputation, and a lot of people know about it. So we've actually had people who now ask us, are you taking part in the Big Give? We would like to be involved in something where there's the potential for funds to be matched. So don't underestimate the impact that has. The next point is quite an interesting one, because it was something that I didn't think would work, but it became a really important part of our campaign. My team suggested adding a simple donation pledge form on our website where people could actually go in and say how much they plan to give during the campaign. I didn't actually think anyone would do that. Would they actually go in and say how much they're willing to give and do it ahead of time? But actually, it was incredibly useful, and we had over £10,000 worth of pledges that were made through that form. One of the great advantages of that, apart from allowing us to sleep a little bit easier in the run up to campaign week, was that once the campaign did go live, it was a really simple task for the team just to get in touch with everybody, share the link and explain that it had now gone live and remind people. So there was no chance of them missing out. But it was also great to have it so visible on the website because people found it even without us promoting it. So we had a really fantastic scenario where a new donor had gone onto our website to buy something from our Amazon wish list and had come across that page and was really excited at the prospect of match funding. They pledged £800, which was a new donation to us, and they bought items from the wish list as well. So it was a fantastic result. But obviously it was because the information was visible and accessible to them in the lead up to the campaign. As everybody knows, when they're running the campaign, it's a real team effort. You need to get as many people involved in promoting the campaign and spreading the word as possible. As I said, we'd talked about it as a staff team, but we needed to involve our trustees and our volunteers as well. Each week at Stripey Stalk, 80 to 100 different volunteers come and help us across the 3 sites that we operate at, and we needed their support to be our ambassadors. We talk to them a lot, when they're here volunteering with us, but we have a specific, we call it Cake Week, once a quarter, where the staff team make sure that they're available at every, coffee break, and they will sit with the volunteers and update them on our impact, the work that we're doing. We'll share stories, but we'll also share details of upcoming campaigns and areas of focus. So obviously during the Cake Week in October, and we happen to have one next week, the Big Give is a key topic that we'll talk about, and we'll explain the impact and how they can support it. Last year was a great example of how powerful that can be. We had a new volunteer who had recently retired and had joined the sessions. I introduced myself to her after the chat because I hadn't met her, and she thought that her previous employer would be interested in supporting the campaign. By the end of the day, we had a £5,000 pledge for the Big Give, which was a fantastic result, but it just showed the power of the network and how we needed to engage the whole team to make it successful. So in summary for us, the Big Give has become a really significant part of our fundraising strategy. We're planning again this year, and we've set ourselves an even bigger total than we did last year based on the success of our first year of running the campaign. It's an essential part of our fundraising strategy now, and I really hope that it becomes part of yours too. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. That was a really great presentation, and so pleased to see how your first campaign went from 80,000 target to 100,000. That's amazing to see what you can achieve even on your first try. But I think a crucial part of that was getting that whole buy-in from the team, so everyone's putting in that same direction. So well done. I'll now introduce Kirsty from Learn to Love to Read, who won the Best Creative Fundraising Award last year. So I'll hand over to Kirsty now.
Hi, thank you. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, so hi, thank you so much for inviting us to speak today. And I've been making notes furiously from our other two presenters, so that was great. Got some brilliant ideas from them. So I'm from Learn to Love to Read. I'm the fundraising manager from the charity, and we are a literacy charity. So we were founded 11 years ago to help close the literacy gap and make sure that children, no matter where they started off within the borough of Wandsworth, were able to attain literacy before they leave primary school. We've grown from having 2 people in one school in Wandsworth to having almost 70 volunteers who read with 200 children in 10 schools across Wandsworth. In addition to that, we provide early years classes, and we are doing about 100 of those each year. We're working with several hundred families each year, and we donate over 1,500 books to children and families across Wandsworth each year. Many of those families, that is the only book that that their children have, and the books that we give them are the only ones that are available to them. We also work with other charities, including one of the branches of Home Start in our local area. So the need for literacy is growing as children are reading less for pleasure. And literacy is one of the key indicators of success for children. In fact, as you can see here, it's more powerful. It has more of an impact on the child's academic progress and their progress throughout their life than where they came from, than their socioeconomic status, anything else that's affecting their life. Having literacy makes a huge impact. Sadly, 21% of children in Wandsworth still leave primary school unable to read to the required standard. That figure nationally is 25%. So the situation is slightly better in Wandsworth than in some parts of the country, but still 21% of children are completely ill prepared for secondary school, meaning that the attainment gap between those children and their more affluent peers just continues to widen throughout their secondary school and becomes very, very difficult for them to catch up. There we go. So why we take part in the Big Give, we've been doing this for about 4 years now. I've been working with the charity for 2. And we started doing this really because of the opportunity for matched funding. In times gone by, we would have had around 80% of our funding coming from grant applications and trust funding and so on. But that has changed over time, and my predecessors realised that we really needed to diversify how we were trying to gain funding, and the Big Give campaigns seem to be a great opportunity for doing that when we could secure this matched funding. It's giving us access to funders that we would not ordinarily have access to. We've also found that it really focuses our fundraising efforts. So it gives us a really strong target as a team. As Emma said, in their small charity, we're very similar. There's only 7 of us. We're part-time. We don't have massive budgets, or we don't have any budgets actually, for communications, for social media. We don't have anyone dedicated to doing any of those things. Typically social media is myself and one of my colleagues, but we're doing all of the jobs ourselves amongst this group of 7 people. So we've really found that having something like the Christmas Challenge gives us a message. So it gives us a starting point, and having that matched funding, as I think both of the other speakers have said, really gives a great hook, and people really engage with that. And we found our supporters really engage with it. And just having access to things like these webinars where we can get ideas from other people, having the print and social media collateral is invaluable to small charities such as ours, where we don't have that kind of thing. So with our 2024 campaign, that was the first time that the charity had a fundraising manager on board. So I was able to dedicate my time to the Big Give campaign in the lead up to it. So it's probably the first time that we had a proper strategy of like how we were going to do this. I think we've been successful every year, and that's been amazing. But I know my colleagues have found it really stressful at times. So for 2024, our aims were to kind of build our local awareness. We are very small. We only work in Wandsworth, but that gives us a really unique position in that we really understand the community and we are all part of it. We all live here as well. So we want to make sure that more and more people within the borough know what we're doing and also know about the need. We wanted to raise funds to support ongoing delivery of our core programme. We have found it much easier to secure funds for our early years work than for our work within the schools and for core costs. And so we wanted to really focus these funds on delivering that. We also wanted to reach new donors and build engagement. We are very lucky to have had the most amazing founder who has been able to leverage connections and build within her circle, within her community, some fantastic donations. And last year she was moving away from the charity and into the next phase of her life, and we wanted to make sure that we carry on her great work and try and attract new donors and create new relationships. We also felt it was really important to start formally building business contacts, and we had some networks, but we wanted to really expand on that so that we can be placed within that business community in Wandsworth and on their radar. So our strategy was to come at everything in 3 different ways. So it was the business partnerships, really focusing on the online campaign. We hadn't really done a lot of campaigning through social media before. As I said earlier, we're kind of muddling through. We're doing this as we go and learning as we go. So we really wanted to focus on making that online campaign a really big part of this Big Give week. And we also wanted to put on some events and do some live events. We have the most amazing group of volunteers, and we wanted to have some events that we could invite them to and hopefully attract new donors as well. So our business partnerships, we had several different ways that we did this. We worked with a local business, Squeezed in Balham. They make juices and sushi and amazing food. If anyone does happen to be in Southwest London, really, their food's delicious. And they were able to work with us to deliver this campaign that we called Sip to Support. So for every drink that they sold within a set period of time, they donated 25 pence to our campaign. And they saved that up in advance of the campaign. And during the Big Give week, they actually doubled that to 50 pence per drink that they sold. And that was amazing for us because it was something that was ongoing, again, a really good hook and a good story that we could share with the community, but it was also great for their business. They're quite a new business into the area, so we were able to get people to come in to increase their footfall. So it was really positive for both parties. They are also brilliant at social media. And so we were able to collaborate with them, and these collaborations, and just like being able to share ideas with them and come up with some stuff to work on together, increased our social views by 40% and also encouraged press coverage. And the last thing that was fantastic about this partnership was that it actually gave us a physical space to advertise our campaign. We don't have an office, we don't have anywhere that we can publicize what we do in a physical environment. And this gave us that space. We made a giant wreath with books hanging from it that we put in their window, and they had flyers, and everyone who came in, they were asking and talking to about our campaign. So people were hearing about it in the local community every single day. We also built on previous relationships with some schools, and one of the private prep schools in the area and their PTA were able to hold an Own Clothes Day for us. That was actually really nice because it also gave me the opportunity to go in and speak to the children in this school. So we spoke to them about the work that we were doing, and then the children went home to their parents and told their parents about the work we were doing, and the PTA then were also really impressed with the work that we were doing, and so chose to match the collection that was made in school. And so we were able to raise £500 from that particular event, which was then of course match funded. But for us, it wasn't all about businesses donating funds. We have a long-term relationship with Howden Insurance in Tooting, and they actually held a networking evening for us. This was back in November, and they enabled us to come and speak to people from local businesses across the Wandsworth Borough and talk about our work. And of course, we talked about the Big Give. And then we were able to engage with the people after we'd spoken and create connections and have like one-to-one chats about the work that we were doing. So that particular event actually made connections that led to directly to donations from other businesses, and indeed from another local charity that support projects occurring within the Tooting area. And that particular charity were able to donate £500 to our Christmas challenge. We also from there were able to start compiling a business mailing list that we were then able to contact as the Big Give week commenced and remind them of what we were doing. And in a similar way to Stripey Stalk, we were able to get in touch with them and say, you know, you'd mentioned that you were interested in donating. It's now live. Here's the link. And we had several £100s donated that way as well. Our target for last year was 15,000, and yeah, that felt like an awful lot for us. And so we really did want to try and work out in advance how many people we thought were going to donate. We then lastly decided to do some events. So we came up with the idea of doing a wreath making night. And that was something that I led just as, you know, something I enjoy doing, and was able to put together the event. It ended up looking absolutely beautiful and was a really successful event. We again built on previous connections with a local pub that does a very good Christmas decoration, and they were able to give the space to us for free and provide like the audiovisual stuff that we needed. It was a completely new event. We hadn't ever done anything like that before, so it was a bit of a risk, but it definitely paid off. We did also have a business sponsor the event and pay for all of the materials, another one of our connections. And in total, the one evening raised 1,785. So we did this to make it work with being the funds coming in directly to the Big Give. We charged a ticket price which covered the cost of materials in advance, and that amount obviously did not get match funded. And then on the night of the event, everyone came knowing that the rest of the amount was to be paid on the night, and those donations they made directly to the Big Give campaign during our live event. Some people were obviously then in that moment more generous and paid beyond their named ticket price. It was such a success. We had a waiting list, and so this year we have 3 sessions planned during the Big Give week itself, and 2 of them are full and have waiting lists, and the daytime one is heading towards full. So very excited about that. We then also held our volunteer coffee morning on the Friday of the Big Give week. Now we always do our volunteer coffee mornings, and we always have a Christmas one. So this is very much part of our annual schedule, but we gave it a bit of a Big Give twist in 2024. We had some Christmas cards made. A local artist kindly created an image for us, and we added that to Christmas cards. We sold those at the event. We sold some of the some wreaths that I had made, and we also had cakes made by another one of our team. And of course, we had books for sale as well. And the total in that event was £415. But what was really lovely about that event was that was the point where we tipped over our total. So we were able to celebrate that with our volunteers, who essentially make all of this possible. Our communications were really important, we think, during the Big Give campaign. In advance of the week itself, we contacted our mailing lists and we told them about the campaign. We told them what we were doing, and we were very careful not to only ask for donations. We know that our volunteers already give us a lot of time, and many of them are extremely generous with donations as well. But we want to make sure that we're not always just asking for money, asking for money, asking for money. So we also asked them to share our social media. So we made it very clear that we would be making a lot of posts during that week and in the lead up to that week. And could they please like, share, comment everywhere they possibly could, which they did. And that was fantastic for us. We issued a press release. Again, this is something we hadn't done before. We sent it to local publications and online news channels in the local area, and it was picked up by Tooting Newsy, who reach over 20,000 people with each one of their social media posts and have a following of 40,000. So for us as a very small charity who only have, we have like 1,000 followers, it was amazing to be able to reach that many people, and they were very supportive with continuing to publicize what we were doing. We think that planning was really key to making our communication strategy work. We weren't kind of like on the fly having to think of new interesting ideas for socials, for the website. We sat down way in advance and developed our content plan for social media. It was myself and our communications officer. We actually are doing that next week for this year's campaign. So it will be all planned out down to which posts we're doing on which day, and we will start developing them so that during that week we're not trying to film content, to create content, to come up with ideas. It's just ready to go. And that gives us more time to be reaching out to people individually and running the events that we're running. We did also reach out to our previous donors to see if they would help again, and we were able to get £2,500 donated on the first day of the campaign through those reach outs. As I said before, we made collaborative social media posts with our business partners, which helped us both reach new audiences, but for us with a smaller following really made sure that we did get out there and reach the wider community. Our social media, most of our social posts were short form video. We really did try and emphasize the idea of match funding, of making double the difference. And we tried to do things that were different from what we normally do to catch attention. So we spent weeks before the Big Give Week itself, filming people within Squeezed drinking their drinks and asking them, would you say I'm sipping to support? And so we had this whole montage of people from around the community saying, like, I'm sipping to support. And then we were able to ask, can you find yourself? Do you see anyone you recognize? And that was a really successful part of our social media strategy. We were also able to contact the authors that we'd worked with throughout the year to ask them to film content for us. So we were able to have some of their input as well, and they very much reflect the communities that we support with their diversity and life experiences. So that was fantastic for us. We did do some more traditional media. We did posters for local cafes. We included a QR code. I mentioned before we created this giant book themed Christmas wreath, which had our QR code in the middle. And we really focused on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And we asked all of our trustees to share everything on LinkedIn and try and spread the message as much as possible. And we were very mindful to also be talking about the need and not just always be asking for donations. Post the event, we also went through on our socials and made sure to thank everyone, and we sent personal cards and impact reports to those who made larger donations. So our results, we ended up being 63% over our target at the end of our campaign as a direct result of the campaign, but it was once the Big Give had actually finished, the week finished, we received an extremely generous £7,000 donation from a supporter, and that was, as I say, specifically came about because they'd seen the Big Give campaign. 62 of the donors that we had were completely new supporters, which was amazing for us because we obviously are now able to go back to them this year. They are now part of our mailing lists, so we've increased our scope of supporters. Our new events raised 16% of our total, and again, built awareness beyond our usual supporters, and now have led to us being able to run triple the amount of events that we did last year. And our social media campaign didn't just raise funds, but it also increased our follower base by 5%. So again, giving us more people that we can approach this year. So our big lessons learned and our tips are that it's really never too early to start. We've been talking about this campaign like since before the summer. You don't know if you're match funded at that point, but we wanted to make sure that we were thinking about what we were going to do. We think it's important to try new things. We'll be trying some new stuff again this year to make sure that we can continue on and build on our success. Preparation is so important. Trying to do as much of the social media, as much of the stuff that you're doing in advance of the event, I think it's really vital, so that during that week you can really focus on making those individual connections that you need to make with perhaps larger donors, chasing up on mailing lists and so on. One of our massive learnings and one of the biggest successes for us was all around collaboration, working with other partners, people who have larger followers than you, or taking on other people's ideas, just the creative direction that our partners were able to take us in that we potentially may not have thought of, was really, really effective for us and has been useful throughout the year as well. And our last thing is to be ambitious. We maybe could have been slightly more ambitious with our target last year. We have upped it this year. And so, yeah, we do think it's a good idea to be ambitious. And yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Kirsty. That was a really great presentation. Lots of creative ideas to take away. So thank you for sharing that. And I'd also like to invite Nicola and Emma back on. I think there are quite a few questions for all of the panelists, but Beth, do you want to kick us off with the questions that you highlighted?
Yeah, one to start, Nicola, I know a lot of people really resonated with the whole pledge idea. So it'd just be great to hear about how many of those pledges were honoured when the campaign was actually live.
Yeah, so our pledge form, I was just looking at it to remind myself, super simple, 5 fields. Really, you know, there's some wording around it about that would only contact them based on the pledge, and, you know, it wouldn't be for general marketing. We had 51 people who completed that form, and we know that at least 44 of them went on to then donate once we'd contacted them during the campaign. Some of them we couldn't connect up because they might have been part of a corporate group or something, we weren't sure, but definitely 44 of them did. So it was a great result.
Brilliant. And yeah, I think I've already put the link to the case study page on the website in the chat in case anyone is interested in reading the full case studies. But just a question for all of you actually. For any events that you did do in the lead up or during the campaign week itself, how did you manage those donations, especially the ones if there are any events held before the campaign actually started?
Well, for us, we had to take funds in advance for our Big Give wreath making campaign, and those, because they came directly to the charity, we couldn't include them in the match funding amount, but we split the ticket price so that we would then take additional donations on the night. We were lucky enough to secure a corporate sponsor for those for the materials, who then made their payment for those materials during the Big Give week. So that was one of the ways that we did that. But that is something that's a little bit challenging if you can't fit in everything in that week.
Yeah, and for us, you have to kind of take people on trust as well, because obviously we had some, you know, people who it feels quite strange to when people want to give you money before the campaign and say, no, can you hold on to it and wait until the campaign's running? But most of the scenarios were people that we had strong relationships with, and they were just so enthused by the idea of it being matched that it was fine. And I think another thing that's also important, I think it might have changed this year, but last year, if the donation was over £500 and you had the ability to pay by backs, there was a bit of a slightly more complex process about those transactions going through, and actually knowing in advance that there were going to be some of these higher payments, we could send the communications, explain, get our donors prepared, because what we didn't want to do was have them donate towards the end of the campaign, there'd be a delay and their donation not matched. So actually it was really important to know about some of those bigger amounts in advance so that we could prepare the donors.
Yeah, I was just going to add along similar lines that having the trust in the organisers of those community events for you to hold on to the funds and then donate them as individuals themselves during campaign week was important. But we did do some during the week as well. For example, our little cake sales that we had, and we found that having a QR code that people could scan or giving them a link to donate in real time worked quite well. They may not have had a few pennies here and there to buy a cake, and so they were more obliged to put a little bit more in if it was an online donation, rather than trying to fork out some, a few pound out of their purse. So yeah, it is holding on to the funds by the organizer and them donating it to the campaign week. I think it's also worthwhile saying that always just check with your treasurer or your finance team as well, what they're comfortable with in terms of the rules that you have around who donates what and when. Because like you say, you can't donate to your own charity, so it does have to come from an individual. I hope that answers everything.
Thank you all. I have a question here from Sean. How do you promote the Big Give in advance of the week itself? Do you promote it to all supporters? I'm specifically wondering whether we should email a whole email list in the next few weeks, asking them to pledge that they will donate. So yeah, I think that's for all panelists. Like, when do you send out your comms? Do you send it out to everyone? Yeah, any insights there?
I mean, we've already started mentioning it because we're already selling our wreath making tickets. So people already know that it's coming and that the invitation to book tickets has gone out to our complete mailing list. We would also tell our complete mailing list when we're going, like it'll go in our volunteers newsletter, it will go in our general newsletter to say that it's coming up. So yeah, we would initially start with everyone.
Yeah, exactly the same for us. It'll be in our general newsletters, and then the message is more generic and it gets more specific as you come down the funnel. And so obviously people that we can count on, or have a history of giving, or a history of giving at Christmas time, there was a specific group then that I would be contacting personally and talking to, and some of those we've already had conversations with, and some of those, they'd get a very specific mailing or an email from me or a phone call. But yeah, definitely just include it wherever you can. And is key. Is you've just got to keep sharing it and sharing the great communications that the Big Give put out as well, because I think that's the other thing that you benefit from, is that this is something that's happening nationally. There's a bit of a buzz around it. People have become used to the pattern that there is a Christmas challenge that other charities they're aware of or usually take part in. So you you can kind of benefit from that tide as well.
And then also just from a social media point of view, I said things like having a countdown on the go is really fun and gets people engaged that way. So on top of all of the other communications through email and newsletters, etc., that you put out, we find doing 3 weeks till the week of giving, countdown so and so in 1 week, 2 sleeps, 1 sleep. It says people keeps it fresh in their mind and keeps reminding them that it's coming up. Which is quite exciting.
That's really good. And I guess looking to the kind of flip side of the campaign now, obviously all of you exceeded your target last year, which is amazing, and hopefully the same again will happen this year. But what did you do to try and keep people donating even after you reached your target? Do you have any tips for charities?
I guess one of the main things was just keeping people informed on the progress of the campaign. We didn't want it to be right, thanks for your money, that's it. And so we those that permitted us to stay in touch with them, they've become a subset, and they've received even more communications about this specific area of work around the safe sleep. And so that's really kept them engaged, and we've deliberately not included an ask in that, but that will start to change now as we get towards this year's campaign. But actually people really appreciated that, and one of the communications that we sent was from the perspective of one of the volunteers who was involved in the work and in preparing the cots to go out, and he wrote about how meaningful it had been in some of the stories and cases he'd been involved in. And we got some really lovely feedback from people who really like to hear things from a volunteer's perspective and not just the sort of corporate line. So so that was really important in terms of keeping people engaged.
Yeah, I'd say similarly, having a good stewardship strategy is really important. So some of those donors at the end might have donated and saw that their donation didn't get doubled, but you've now engaged them, and if they allow for further comms after that, you've got the ability to, like Nicola said, share stories throughout the year, keep them engaged. And if they were to then support in your next Christmas Challenge campaign, they could go a little bit earlier maybe so that they can see their donation doubled. But yeah, I'd say definitely still promote it as much as you can, even if you've reached your target, because people love seeing that as well. They love seeing that you've got your target. They love being part of that. excitement of success, and then going forward being able to communicate what their contribution actually meant to your charity is really important.
I think for us, we reached our target on the Friday, so we only then had Monday and the Tuesday morning, well, the weekend, but we wouldn't particularly be contacted. We don't normally post and stuff on the weekends, so we didn't do that again. We did change our messaging so that we weren't promising people that they were going to be match funded when we knew that they weren't, but we still carried on talking about the work that we were doing, how we would be spending this money, and celebrating the success, and saying that we'd reached this target and how amazing was that, and couldn't have done it without them, and encouraging people to still donate. But we did make sure that we changed the messaging so that we didn't talk about match funding anymore.
Okay, and we had a question here about comms during the actual campaign week. How much comms do you send during the Christmas Charity Week to your existing supporters mailing list? Is every day too much? Yeah, any thoughts? And Beth, you can also jump in here as well.
We wouldn't send to our mailing lists every day, certainly. We would never do that. We sent them something like the normal newsletter that we would send, and then we did send like a further communication. So our volunteers would get different communications. So they would be being communicated with anyway about our monthly meetups, and this was the Christmas themed one, so that they would have received further communication. But really, we kind of took that to those who, in smaller subsets, if we were going out again to people, there would be a specific reason for doing that. We try not to send them too many messages to the mailing lists.
It's slightly different for us at Big Give because obviously we run different themed campaigns throughout the year. So we typically will only really contact our donor mailing list whilst we have those campaigns. So we typically send about 3 emails across the Christmas Challenge week. So kind of the pre-launch, midway, and then a last chance. That might be too much for some people. So I would definitely just think about your kind of existing email comms schedule. Maybe you will do a launch and maybe you'll do a last chance, and that's kind of enough for the mailing list. But obviously you'll be reaching people across a variety of channels. So whilst email is a huge driver for many of the donations that we see on the platform, you'll still be doing social media posts, you might be doing things on your website, and people might see multiple things across different platforms, and that would then encourage them to donate. So just think about your channels all together and then plan your comms that way, I would say.
Great, thank you both. That is 1 o'clock. There was a question about LinkedIn, but that is a great segue to end this webinar because you can ask that question, Chloe. Tomorrow we have a webinar on digital ads, and Karis, who is presenting that webinar, also has knowledge about social media. So please do save your question for that webinar tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And we also have the Ask Us Anything webinar on Monday at 12 o'clock. But I want to thank Kirsty, Nicola, and Emma for sharing their time with us today, sharing their experiences with us. There's a lot of great tips for charities and also for us to take away as Big Give. So thank you all for your great presentations. I want to thank all of the attendees for joining us today and asking us so many questions, and hopefully see all of you tomorrow. See you, everyone.